My name is Polly, and I am 27 years old. This is the tale of how my life became entangled in a web of deception and betrayal. But it is also the story of how I overcame manipulation and malice, seeking justice against both my spouse and mother-in-law. I encountered Ralph, my spouse, a charming and charismatic gentleman, and was captivated by his loving words and promises of a promising future. We fell deeply in love and soon married, believing that our love would triumph over all obstacles. Little did I realize that our love story would take a treacherous turn. The source of my anguish was none other than Ralph's mother, Martha. From the very beginning, she held a strong resentment towards me, perceiving me as an intruder in her son's life. She was one of those mothers. Someone should conduct thorough psychosocial research to understand why these types of mothers behave this way, as it has become quite excessive. Ralph had been providing Martha with his entire salary for the past 7 years. Yes, he was one of those sons, leaving our own financial stability hanging by a thread. It was a betrayal that deeply wounded me, tearing at the very core of our marriage. I pleaded with him repeatedly throughout the years to cease this behavior, but he always dismissed my concerns, indicating that his mother took precedence over the new family we were trying to build. Unfortunately, I didn't take much action to stop it. You may be wondering why. Well, I was only 20 years old when we got married. I was still a young and naive individual. I was once a naive young girl who believed that my husband would eventually realize his mistakes and change because his love for me ran so deep. Looking back, I now understand that I was foolish to think this way. Unfortunately, I was too afraid to speak up against both Ralph and Martha, who seemed to always be together. Their arrogance and hot-headedness made them a destructive force, and it took me 7 long years to fully grasp that. As time went on, the tensions between Martha and myself escalated. She would constantly belittle me, making it clear that I was not welcome in her house or her life. She saw my presence as a privilege that only a few could afford. I tried to express my concerns to my husband, but he ignored me each time, showing no concern for the verbal and emotional abuse I endured from this woman. His indifference made him just as guilty as Martha in my torment, and I couldn't forgive him for that. Then, one fateful day, Ralph lost his job, and that's when I truly saw the extent of Martha's animosity towards me. She wasted no time in kicking me out, claiming that the house Ralph and I were living in belonged to her. This crushed my spirit and left me vulnerable and homeless. I couldn't help but wonder, Martha, do you really hate me that much? How can you evict me from a house that isn't even yours? It's not that I hate you, darling, Martha replied coldly. I simply don't care for you. Besides, with Ralphie's job loss, there's no way I'm sorry to hear that he may no longer be able to provide support for you. That's why I have decided to step in and take charge. This dwelling belongs to me, and in certain aspects, it has always been under my ownership. What do you mean? It was just him and me residing in this abode. And now you want to disrupt the familial dynamic and financial resources by moving in? And how can you claim that it has always been your property? In what manner? How dare you? How can you address me in such a manner? How dare you even question me, you foolish young lady? You do not require knowledge of the specific details since you are no longer a resident here. Well, I suppose I no longer need to hide my disdain for you since you are being evicted. Just wait until I inform Ralph about your wicked scheme. I exited the residence and proceeded to contact my spouse, believing that he would assist me. However, it turned out to be a grave error. Hello, what is happening? You appear distressed. Distressed doesn't even begin to describe it, Ralph. Your mother has expelled me from the house on the same day you lost your employment. Why? It has been occurring for years, Ralph. You have been providing her with your entire salary without considering our financial stability. I have silently endured, hoping that you would change, while she has been manipulating you. Don't deny it. Someone who has been manipulated is unaware of the deception until they awaken from their delusion, and you, my dear husband, are still under her influence. I promise you, Polly, if you continue to speak ill of my mother in that manner, you will what? Will you also give her all of my money? You need to cease being so. I was in a state of delusion, realizing that the way my mother-in-law was treating me was inappropriate. How can I just sit there and do nothing? I am his spouse, for goodness sake. Enough is enough. It's no surprise that she kicked him out of her house. Pardon me, you heard correctly. I will not tolerate you disrespecting her and me in this manner. Now, please gather your belongings and leave my mother's residence immediately. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did I somehow transport myself to an alternate reality where mistreating one's wife was considered a display of love and affection? Certainly not. So why was he speaking to me like this? Without uttering a word, I retreated back into the house only to find Martha, my mother-in-law, smirking and laughing, proudly proclaiming that her new house was solely hers now, and that I was finally leaving her and her son alone. I thought it wise to keep my mouth shut, and let me tell you, it took every ounce of strength in my body to do so. I silently packed my belongings, ensuring I could leave without risking imprisonment for any potential actions I may have taken. As angry as I was, I also felt deeply hurt and confused. What kind of mother-in-law treats her daughter-in-law in such a manner? Seeking solace with a friend, I tended to my emotional wounds and attempted to piece together the fragments of my shattered life. The despair within me fueled a burning desire for justice. I couldn't let Martha's actions go unanswered. Furthermore, I couldn't let my foolish husband Ralph off the hook either. They both needed to face the consequences. My friend continuously reminded me that I must not let these actions slide. Unpunished, I decided to go back to the house to give that woman a piece of my mind. Once again, I found myself standing in front of Martha's house, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. It was time to confront her and make her face the consequences of her actions. As I entered, memories came rushing back to me. This house had been a place of pain and manipulation, but soon it would symbolize my triumph. What are you doing here, Polly? You have no right to be in my house. Oh, I believe I do, Martha. After all, your actions brought me here. Martha looked surprised and disbelieving. She expected me to be weak, to run away defeated. But little did she know, I had found my strength. You think you can just come in here and take whatever you want. You're nothing but a parasite, Polly. No, Martha, I am no longer the timid woman you could manipulate. I have grown stronger, and I have had enough of your games. You used my husband's salary to build this house, and now it's time for me to take control. You're delusional if you think you can outsmart me. I have been manipulating people my whole life. Manipulation may be your expertise, Martha, but today the tables have turned. You underestimated me just as you underestimated the power of a woman who has been pushed to her limits. As we exchanged heated words, the tension in the air grew. The atmosphere in the room became tangible. It wasn't simply a confrontation between two individuals. It was a clash of determination, a battle for fairness. You may have triumphed in this conflict, Polly, but the struggle is not yet finished. I will ensure that you regret your actions. We will see about that, Martha. I have spent years living under your influence, enduring your mistreatment. But today, I am reclaiming my life, my happiness, and my freedom. Your reign is at an end. Enjoy the day that you believe you deserve. Your reign is at an end. Enjoy the day that you believe you deserve. With those concluding words, I turned away from Martha, leaving her shocked and defeated. As I departed from the house, a sense of victory filled my heart. It was a small triumph, but it marked a step towards a future liberated from manipulation and suffering. The path ahead would still present challenges, but fear no longer held me captive. I had confronted my tormentor, and in doing so, I discovered my resilience. I have faith in the concept of karma, and boy, oh boy, did I stumble upon something that could work to my advantage. While leaving the premises, I noticed a couple of contractors diligently installing a prominent red sign on my mother-in-law's front porch. The sign boldly proclaimed an upcoming auction. Was she really planning to auction off the property so soon? But why? This certainly piqued my curiosity, and given what I knew about her questionable business dealings, her decision to sell the house might have been part of her scheme all along. What if she was attempting to conceal her tracks by selling the property? I returned to my confidant and shared the newfound information. She, too, believed that everything seemed a bit suspicious. I was fortunate enough to stumble upon her engagement in this dubious activity, which sparked an idea for the perfect retaliation. To validate my suspicions, I conducted further investigation and confirmed that Martha was indeed organizing an auction for her house the following day. This only fueled my determination to uncover the truth behind these shady dealings. Serendipitously, I chanced upon a notice advertising the auction of Martha's house. It felt as though fate had intervened, presenting me with an opportunity to regain control over my own destiny. Filled with newfound purpose, I meticulously devised a plan for my revenge. I thoroughly analyzed the housing market, calculated the maximum bid within my means, and prepared myself to confront Martha in an unexpected manner. Little did she know, I had risen from the depths of despair, transformed by the resilience instilled in me through adversity. As I entered the auction room, my heart raced with a mix of apprehension and determination. However, my presence was promptly halted by the individuals who had tormented me for the past 7 years. "Oh, for goodness sake. What brings you here? Are you obsessed with us? I explicitly told you not to show up. I am still deeply upset with you." "Well, the feeling is mutual, believe me. I am here for the auction, just like any other person has the right to be. If you have an issue with that, feel free to take it up with the authorities once I file a report. I have experienced a situation that involved harassment. It was quite amusing to witness someone who believed they could acquire a certain house. I found it rather absurd and questioned their sanity, my dear. The thought of evicting this individual crossed my mind, but I decided it wasn't worth the trouble. After all, their presence was nothing but an embarrassment. It was clear that they couldn't afford such a place. With determination, both of us walked away to our respective locations. Martha, in particular, directed a fierce glare towards me. However, I maintained my composure, striving to blend in with the crowd. The bidding was about to commence, and I locked eyes with Martha, a glimmer of defiance and triumph evident in my gaze. The atmosphere within the auction hall was filled with anticipation. The potential buyers eagerly gathered, their attention fixed on the stage where the coveted house would soon be up for grabs. I stood there, my heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The tension in the air was palpable as the bidding began. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an exquisite property available for auction today," the auctioneer announced, presenting a beautiful mid-century modern house with a remarkable history. "Let the bidding commence." As the bidding got underway, I strategically played my cards. Being aware of Martha's questionable financial background, I discreetly leaked information regarding her alleged embezzlement, casting a shadow over the property's reputation. This caused potential buyers to hesitate, unsure of the risks involved. It was the perfect opportunity for me to make my move. "We have an initial bid of $200,000. Are there any higher bids?" the auctioneer called out. Silence filled the room. No one raised their paddle. I couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Why weren't people bidding higher? This house was meant to be mine. It seemed that Martha's secrets had finally caught up with her. "My name is Emily. It's quite fascinating how people perceive things differently. Take this house, for example. Its shady history seems to have deterred potential buyers from paying a higher price." As I observed Martha's reaction, her face flushed with anger and realization. It was evident that she was losing her grip on the situation. For years, she had tried to manipulate and control our lives, but now I could see a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. The panic was palpable. "Let's have a conversation, Polly," Martha said, her tone filled with frustration. "This is not right." I dismissed her apologies, feeling that it was too late for them. She had had ample time, 7 years in fact, to stand up for me and prioritize our happiness. Now it was my turn to take charge of my own life. "You conniving little," Martha began, but I interrupted her, not willing to entertain any insults. "Save your insults, Martha," I asserted firmly. "Your reign of control ends here. This house will serve as a symbol of my victory, a reminder that I will no longer be silenced or cast aside." As the auctioneer called for bids, I raised my paddle. "Do I hear 300,000? He asked, but there were no takers. The crowd seemed unimpressed with the turn of events, especially after hearing about the alleged embezzlement just before the bidding started. The auctioneer continued, "Okay, $200,000 going once, twice, and it's sold." In that moment, I couldn't believe my luck. The house, worth well over $1 million, was now mine for a mere $200,000. People started making their way towards the exit, clearly disappointed with how things had unfolded. Meanwhile, Martha's face contorted with anger and disbelief. She desperately lashed out, trying to regain control of the situation. "You think you've won, Polly," she spat. "This house means nothing. You'll never be able to. I couldn't afford the maintenance and taxes for the house. You will regret this decision. Oh, Martha, don't worry about me. I have plans in motion, and this house will serve as a stepping stone towards a brighter future. As for regrets, well, they belong to those who have lost everything, just like yourself." With those parting words, I turned away from Martha, leaving her simmering with anger. She was yelling and crying while Ralph tried to console her, but honestly, they looked like a complete mess. The triumph was mine, and it tasted even sweeter than I had anticipated. As I walked away from the confrontation, a sense of liberation washed over me. I had regained my power and freed myself from the chains of manipulation. Ralph attempted to approach me, his face filled with remorse and desperation, but I stood my ground, refusing to be swayed by his empty assurances. "It's over, Ralph. I refuse to be a pawn in this toxic game any longer. We are finished. Once I settle into my new home, I will send you the divorce papers. But where will we live? Frankly, you should be more concerned about the embezzlement accusation than anything else, because at this rate, both of you will end up in prison. Polly, please don't do this. It's too late. I have already taken action. Have a pleasant life, Ralph, and do tell your mother that anger is not her best look." Upon hearing this, Martha seemed to shriek even louder. She was utterly furious, and I relished every moment of it. She tried her best to handle the embezzlement allegations, but regardless of their truth, it no longer mattered. Her reputation I had already experienced a tarnished reputation, considering her less than favorable outbursts during the auction. People witnessed an unstable and combative woman, and they desired to steer clear of that as much as possible. However, I held my head high and walked away from the crumbling remnants of my past. The confrontation became a turning point in my life, a moment of clarity and resilience. I knew there would be obstacles ahead, but I was prepared to face them with newfound strength. Revenge had led me to this juncture, but it was self-empowerment and the pursuit of my happiness that would propel me forward. The aftermath of my revenge left a lasting impact on all our lives. As the highest bidder, I now owned Martha's house, the very place she had evicted me from. It was a victory tinged with mixed emotions, symbolizing my triumph and resilience. I channeled my energy into building a new life for myself, one where I had control over my destiny. I established a small business selling handcrafted crochet clothing, pouring my creativity into every stitch. Word quickly spread, and my business began to flourish. The community embraced my creations, and my customer base steadily grew. I am grateful to all of you for supporting my business. Your love and encouragement mean the world to me. As my business expanded, I found myself in the market for additional properties. The once dilapidated apartment that Martha and Ralph were forced to rent now served as a constant reminder of their downfall. The community no longer trusted them, and they had become social outcasts. I was an outcast among the people. Ralph would still reach out to me occasionally, pleading to visit and use my shower with Martha. However, I declined. It's astonishing how everything crumbled, Polly. I never anticipated it would reach this point. Those are simply the outcomes of your self-centered and avaricious actions. You should have defended me all those years ago. You should have informed your mother that her behavior was unjust. Their lives had unraveled like a cascading snowball. The collapse of their lives grew with intensity, magnificence, and force, and the repercussions of their betrayal reverberated through every aspect. They were on the verge of a trial that would expose their aforementioned deceit, attracting more attention to their name. The weight of their actions burdened them, leaving behind a lingering sense of emptiness, frustration, and malevolence. One day, Martha herself contacted me. I have lost everything, Polly. My son no longer loves me. The community no longer trusts me. I am left with nothing. You must assist me. The consequences of your decisions have caught up with you, Martha, but this was never solely about vengeance. It was about seeking justice and reclaiming my power. I hope that you receive everything you deserve, whether it be positive or negative. The community rallied behind me, offering support and admiration for my resilience, which also attracted more customers to my business. In the realm of commerce, by means of my achievements, I discovered a fresh comprehension of my personal power and resolve. The feeling of conclusion that I had desired for was ultimately within my reach. As I beheld the possessions that I presently possessed, I comprehended that retribution had propelled me onward, but it was my persistence and tenacity that bestowed upon me genuine contentment. The previous experiences had molded me, however, they would no longer determine my identity. With each day that elapsed, I embraced the splendor of my expedition, leaving the obscure realms of disloyalty in the past.